What would you say if a cop told you to step to the back of your car right now? If you walk back there without saying the right words, you can give away control of the whole stop. That one move can turn a simple ticket into questions, a frisk, or a search. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could save you from a bad arrest. Smash like too, because stress makes you forget the exact words you need most. When an officer tells you to step to the back, you probably think it's just about safety. That's what almost everybody thinks. But that spot behind your car is where a lot of traffic stops change shape. That's where officers separate you from your passengers. That's where they get you away from your phone, your doors, and your stuff. That's where they watch how you walk, how you stand, and how you answer questions. And that's where nervous drivers start helping build the case against themselves. Let me show you exactly what you need to say before you move, why that line matters, when you should stay quiet, and how you stop a casual order from turning into a fishing trip. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and you keep seeing the same pattern. The driver thinks the hard part is over. It's not. The hard part often starts when you leave your seat. Most people have no idea that the back of your car is not just a waiting spot, it's a pressure spot. You're standing there in the dark, you're away from your dash cam angle, you're trying to look cooperative, and your brain starts racing, so you do what scared people do. You talk, you explain, you laugh nervously. You answer questions nobody can force you to answer. You agree to things you never had to agree to. Here's the reality. The move itself is not always the danger. The danger is what usually comes right after it. Officers know that once you're standing there, you feel smaller, more exposed, and more likely to say yes. That's why you need a script before the stop ever happens, not a speech, just a few clean lines you can remember under pressure. The first move is the most important one, and it starts before your foot touches the ground. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not consent to any searches. Word for word, memorize that line. That is the sentence for this title. You are not refusing to move. You are not arguing. You are doing something smarter. You are separating compliance from consent. That difference can save you. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. A lot of officers rely on people mixing those two things together. You think, if I step out, I guess I also have to answer questions. If I stand at the back, I guess I also have to let them pat me down. If I want to look calm, I guess I should let them look through my car. No, those are different things. When you say that line, you make your position clear from the start. You are willing to follow a lawful order, but you are not giving away extra permission. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it creates a clean record. If the officer later says you seemed cooperative and gave consent, your words say otherwise. They show you complied under authority, not by choice. This is 100% legal. You have every right to say you do not consent to a search. You should say it calmly. You should say it once. Then you should do not 1 inch more than what the law actually requires. And yes, officers can often order you out of the car during a lawful stop. That comes from Pennsylvania v. Mimms. In plain English, the Supreme Court said an officer can make a driver get out during a valid traffic stop for safety reasons. So do not fight that part. Do not play road lawyer. Do not grab the wheel and refuse to move. That can make things much worse for you. But Mimms did not erase your right to refuse consent to a search. That's the key. You can comply with the order and still protect your rights. Bad way, most drivers say, okay, sure, whatever you need. Then the officer treats that nervous answer like full permission to push the stop further. Good way. Smart drivers say, officer, I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not consent to any searches. Then they make it clear they are obeying, not volunteering. Watch what happens when you use that line. The energy changes. You stop sounding confused. You stop sounding easy to push around. You sound measured. You sound aware. And that alone can keep the stop tighter than it would have been otherwise. Former police officers have confirmed this works because clear drivers are harder to manipulate into sloppy consent. Your goal is not to win an argument at the roadside. Your goal is to stop giving away free advantages. Have you ever been told to step to the back during a stop? Drop a comment below and tell me if you would have said that line or just moved without thinking. Now, the second tactic starts the second you're standing there. You need to protect your mouth. Here's exactly what you say if the questions start rolling in. I choose to remain silent and I want a lawyer before answering questions. Those exact words, short, calm, clean, then stop talking. Listen closely because this is critical. The back of your car is where officers often shift from the reason for the stop into the investigation they really want. They already got you out. Now they ask where you're coming from. Why you look nervous, whether you've been drinking, whether there's anything in the car, whether your passenger has warrants. They are not asking because they're bored. They are asking because your own answers can do more damage than anything else in that moment. Here's the reality. You do not talk your way out of pressure stops. You usually talk your way deeper into them. You think you sound helpful when you say, I'm just tired. You think you sound harmless when you say, I'm coming from my cousin's place. You think you sound honest when you say, there's nothing illegal in the car. But every one of those lines gives the officer more to work with. Your tone becomes evidence. Your timeline becomes evidence. Your nervous joke becomes evidence. And if your words later do not match what the officer writes down, that becomes a problem too. That is why this line matters so much. You are not being rude. You are using a right that exists for moments exactly like this. This is 100% legal. You do not owe roadside small talk. You do not owe roadside explanations. You do not owe roadside guesses. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when the stop starts shifting away from the original reason. If the officer truly has grounds to arrest you, your chatting will not stop it. But if the officer is still trying to build grounds, your silence stops you from helping do that work. There's also case law behind this mindset. Berkemer v. McCarty matters here. In plain English, the Supreme Court said traffic stops are serious, but they are not always treated like full custody from the very first second. That means you may start talking long before you realize how much risk you are in. So waiting around for some movie-style warning can be a huge mistake. Protect yourself early. Use your words early, then stop talking. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I'm not doing anything wrong, officer. I was just heading home." Then the officer keeps the questions going and starts building a story around your own answers. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I choose to remain silent and I want a lawyer before answering questions," and the officer loses the easiest source of evidence, which is your own mouth. You should also notice what happens inside your body when you use that line. Your breathing slows down, your brain gets simpler, you stop trying to invent perfect answers, you stop performing. That matters because panic makes people overtalk, and overtalking is where a lot of cases get built. If you remember only 2 lines from this whole video, make one of them the line from tactic 1 and make the other this one. The third tactic is the line that stops open-ended detention. You do not use it in the first 2 seconds. You use it when the officer has your documents, has already moved you, and now seems to be dragging the stop longer than needed. You look at the officer and say this: "Am I being detained, or am I free to leave when this stop is done?" Word for word, that line matters because a stop has a job. The job is to handle the traffic issue, check what needs checking, and either give you a ticket, a warning, or make an arrest if there is real cause. That's it. The stop is not supposed to become an endless roadside interview just because you're standing there at the back bumper. A lot of drivers never ask this. They just wait and wait and wait. They think silence means patience, but time is one of the biggest tools in a stop. The longer you stand there, the more likely you are to get uncomfortable, say something careless, or agree to something just to get it over with. That's why this line matters so much. It forces a checkpoint into the stop. It makes the officer deal with the basic question: are you holding me for the traffic matter, or are you trying to keep me here longer for something else? Rodriguez v. United States is the case you need here. In plain English, the Supreme Court said officers cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed just to look for other crimes unless they have a legal reason to do that. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. That does not mean every extra minute is illegal. It means there has to be a real reason for delay. Your question helps mark that moment. It shows you were not just standing there forever while the stop drifted into something bigger for no reason. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Are we almost done?" Then the officer gives a vague answer, keeps stalling, and you stay trapped in that gray zone. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained, or am I free to leave when this stop is done?" Then they force the officer to address your status instead of hiding inside vague delays. Watch what happens when you ask it the right way. If the officer says you are still detained, that tells you the stop is active, and you stay calm. If the officer says you are free to go, you leave. If the officer avoids the question, that tells your lawyer something later too. Your goal is clarity, not attitude, not defiance, just clarity. And when you combine that with silence and non-consent, you stop acting like a volunteer in your own roadside investigation. There is another reason this works. When you ask calm, direct questions, you stop the stop from feeling automatic. You make the officer choose words, you make the officer define the stage. And that matters because vague roadside moments help the government, not you. Clear roadside moments help your defense later. That is why experienced defense lawyers care so much about short, clean statements. If you've made it this far, you're serious about protecting yourself. Show me by hitting that like button, because the next part ties all 3 tactics together in a way most drivers never see coming. Now let's put the legal pieces together so you really understand why these lines work. Pennsylvania v. Mimms says officers can usually order a driver out of the car during a lawful stop. Maryland v. Wilson extends that idea to passengers too. In plain English, the court said officer safety can justify getting people out of the car. So if you hear "step to the back," you should understand something very important. The smart move is not refusing to move. The smart move is protecting your rights while you comply. That is why your first line matters so much. Then you have Berkemer v. McCarty. In simple English, that case tells you traffic stops can become dangerous for you before they feel dangerous. You may start talking long before you realize those answers can be used against you. That is why your silence line matters. Then you have Rodriguez v. United States. In simple English, that case says a traffic stop cannot be stretched out longer than needed just to go hunting for other stuff without a real legal reason. That is why your detention line matters. Here's the reality. These cases do not give you a magic spell. They give you a map. Comply with lawful orders. Do not consent to searches. Do not help build the case with your own words. Ask clear questions when the stop starts stretching out. That is the framework. That is why each line fits the moment it fits. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in real life. You get pulled over at night for a broken taillight. The officer walks up, takes your license, and then says, "Step to the back of the car for me, wrong way first." You say, "Sure, no problem." You hop out fast, you leave the door cracked. You walk back, the officer asks where you're coming from, you answer. The officer asks if there's anything illegal in the car, you laugh and say no. The officer asks if you mind if he checks real quick, you say, "Go ahead, I've got nothing to hide." Now look at the damage. You gave free conversation. You gave free consent. You gave the stop room to grow. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, officer, whatever you need." Then the stop opens up, the questions pile on, and the officer gets a green light to keep pushing. Now the better way. The officer says, "Step to the back of the car for me." You say, "Officer, I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not consent to any searches." Then you move. At the back of the car, the officer starts asking where you're coming from. You say, "I choose to remain silent, and I want a lawyer before answering questions." Then you stop talking. If the stop keeps dragging after the traffic business should be done, you ask, "Am I being detained, or am I free to leave when this stop is done?" That sequence changes everything. You still look calm, you still look controlled, but you stop feeding the stop with free material. That is a huge shift. The officer now has to rely on actual legal grounds, not your nervous cooperation. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not consent to any searches." Then they move without surrendering every other right they still have. That is the full play. You are not trying to win on the roadside. You are trying to avoid losing on the roadside, and those are very different goals. If an officer has real cause, your lines will not make that disappear. But if the officer is testing you, probing you, and looking for openings, your lines can shut those openings fast. I've seen this pattern again and again. The drivers who get in the deepest trouble are often the ones who think being extra chatty will make the officer go easy on them. It usually does the opposite. Next week, I'm dropping the phone search video. Subscribe right now, because if you ever hand over your device the wrong way, you can expose your whole life in seconds. So here's the quick recap you need burned into your brain. First, when you hear "step to the back," do not argue and do not freeze. Say you will comply with lawful orders, but you do not consent to searches. Second, once you're back there, protect your mouth and stop answering questions without a lawyer. Third, if the stop starts dragging, ask if you are being detained or free to leave when the traffic matter is done. You are not being difficult, you are being clear. And clear beats scared every single time. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video before you actually need it. Smash like if this just changed how you'll handle your next stop. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.